The boy was dying. I could see it in the blue tint around his lips, hear it in the wet rattle of his lungs. 6 years old, maybe 7, and already drowning in his own body. I had ridden 3 days through Montana snow to escape medicine. Turned out, medicine had been waiting for me at the end of the road. The woman standing in the ranch house doorway didn't ask if I was a doctor. She asked something harder. "Can you save him without making me owe you my soul?" My horse stamped beneath me, impatient from the cold. January wind cut across the prairie like 1,000 knives, and my hands were numb inside my gloves. The Thornton Ranch spread out before me like a painting I'd seen in some dream I couldn't quite remember. Good timber house, strong barn, fence posts that stood straight despite the snow. This was a place someone had built with care. And there on the porch, wrapped in a blanket too thin for this weather, was the child. I didn't decide to dismount. My body just moved, the way it used to move in field hospitals when the wounded came in faster than we could count them. Muscle memory from a life I'd tried to leave behind. The boy coughed. Blood speckled the white blanket. I was on my knees before I knew I'd crossed the yard, my medical bag already open, though I didn't remember reaching for it. The woman tried to push me back, her hand strong against my chest, but I'd already seen too much. Pneumonia, maybe tuberculosis, definitely infection deep in the lungs. Don't touch him unless you're staying. Her voice cut through my concentration. I looked up and met her eyes for the first time. Brown eyes, darker than the Montana soil, exhausted but not defeated. This was a woman who'd fought battles I couldn't imagine and refused to surrender. "I'm staying," I heard myself say. Something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe, or suspicion, hard to tell which. The boy's name was Jasper. He told me that himself, between fits of coughing, his voice barely louder than the wind. His mother carried him inside while I grabbed my bags from the horse. An older boy watched from the window, face pressed against the glass, breath fogging the pain. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and something medicinal I couldn't quite place. Laudanum, maybe. The kitchen was warm, almost too warm, and I realized they'd been trying to sweat the fever out of him. Old frontier logic. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it killed. "I need hot water," I said, "clean cloth, and whatever herbs you have. Sage, if you've got it, thyme, anything that opens the lungs." The woman moved without hesitation, already pulling pots from hooks, stoking the fire hotter. She knew what to do. That told me something important. This wasn't her first medical crisis. The older boy appeared in the doorway, silent as smoke. "How do you know what to do?" he asked. "I used to be a doctor." "Used to be?" The boy's eyes were too knowing for his age. "You can't unbe a doctor. That's like saying you used to be tall." Smart kid. Dangerous kind of smart. "You're right," I said, testing the water temperature with my wrist, the way I'd done 1,000 times before. "I suppose I'm still a doctor, I just don't practice anymore." "Why not?" "That's complicated." My pa used to say, complicated just means I don't want to tell you the truth. The woman's hand stilled for just a moment at the stove. Then she went back to work, but I'd seen the flinch. The boy had learned that line from someone who wasn't here anymore. "What's your name?" I asked him. "Finn." "Well, Finn, your brother's very sick. I'm going to need your help. Can you do that?" He nodded once, quick and serious, like a soldier accepting orders. For the next 6 hours, I fell back into a rhythm I thought I'd forgotten. Steam tent over Jasper's head to open his airways. Poultice of sage and mustard seed on his chest to draw out the congestion. Careful doses of willow bark tea to bring down the fever. The woman worked beside me without needing instruction, anticipating what I needed before I asked for it. Her name was Abigail. She told me that around midnight, when Jasper finally fell into something resembling real sleep instead of the half-conscious fever dreams he'd been trapped in. We sat at the kitchen table, both of us too exhausted to move, watching Jasper's chest rise and fall in the lamplight. Finn had fallen asleep in the corner, wrapped in a quilt, one hand still reaching toward his brother. "What did Reverend Holt tell you about me?" Abigail asked. Her voice was quiet but direct. This was a woman who didn't waste time on small talk. That you needed a husband on paper, I said. That you'd explain why if I asked. I didn't ask. Why not? I figured if you needed a marriage that wasn't real, you had a reason. Just like I had a reason for saying yes before I even got here. She almost smiled at that. Almost. You said yes? I haven't even made the offer yet. Haven't you? We looked at each other across the table. Lamplight caught the lines around her eyes, the silver starting to thread through her hair. She was younger than those marks suggested. Life out here aged people fast. My husband died 8 months ago, she said. Tuberculosis. Took him slow. I nursed him through 6 months of it before his lungs finally gave out. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was a good man. Better than I deserved. There was something in the way she said it, a weight I recognized. Guilt is a language doctors learn to speak fluently. The ranch needs a man's name on the deed, she continued. Railroads coming through, they're buying up land, and they don't negotiate fair with widows. I need someone who can stand with me at the town meetings, sign the papers, make it look legitimate. And in exchange, you get a place to hide. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. Because men don't ride into Montana winter without a reason to run. And they don't refuse to help a dying child unless they're running from the very thing I'm asking them to do. She was right, of course. I'd been running for 2 years, running from Boston, from the hospital, from the faces of the families I couldn't look in the eye anymore. From 3 graves I'd helped dig with decisions I couldn't take back. Jasper's breathing changed slightly. We both heard it, both tensed, but he was just shifting in his sleep, still feverish but stable. For now. How long, I asked. 2 years, unless the railroad dispute settles sooner. And after that? After that, you're free to go, or stay, your choice. She pulled a folded paper from her apron pocket. In the lamplight, I could see it was covered in her careful handwriting. Terms and conditions, spelled out like a business contract. Because that's what this was. A transaction. I read through it twice. Separate quarters. No questions about the past. Medical care for Jasper in exchange for legal protection and a new start. It was fair, more than fair. What did you lie about? I asked. She looked up sharply. You said your husband was better than you deserved. You said he was a good man, past tense, like he's someone you failed. What did you lie to him about? That's not part of the contract, no. But if I'm going to put my name next to yours, I want to know what kind of weight it's carrying. For a long moment, I thought she'd tell me to leave, pack my bags and ride back out into the snow. Instead, she folded her hands on the table and looked at me with those exhausted, honest eyes. I lied about loving him. Every day for 10 years, I lied. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Why marry him then? Because I was pregnant with another man's child, and my father would have thrown me out if I didn't find a husband fast, Marcus offered. He knew I didn't love him. I told him the truth before we married. He said someday I might, and even if I didn't, he'd love me enough for both of us. She looked down at her hands. He kept that promise until the day he died, and I kept lying. The clock on the mantel ticked. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. Jasper's breathing stayed steady. I picked up the pen she'd left beside the contract. I once had to choose which soldiers to save on a battlefield, I said. 4 men bleeding out. Only enough morphine and time for 1 surgery. I chose a general over 3 enlisted men. The general lived. The 3 soldiers died the next day from wounds I could have treated. Why tell me this? Because I understand guilt. And I understand lying to protect people from truths they can't handle. I've spent 2 years lying to myself about whether I made the right choice. Maybe it's time we both stop running from the things we can't change. I signed my name at the bottom of the page. Samuel Mercer, in handwriting that still looked like a doctor's prescription, all sharp angles and hasty certainty. Abigail took the paper, folded it carefully, and tucked it back in her apron. Barn's cleaned out, she said. Stove works. Bedding's fresh. You start tomorrow. What about tonight? Tonight you sleep in the chair by Jasper's bed. His fever could spike again. She was already moving toward the stairs, done with the conversation, now that business was settled. At the doorway, she paused. "Dr. Mercer?" "Yes?" "Thank you for staying." She disappeared upstairs before I could respond. I pulled my chair closer to Jasper's makeshift sickbed. Finn was still asleep in the corner, his face peaceful in a way it probably wasn't when he was awake. These boys had been through something. You could see it in the careful way they moved, the watchful way they looked at the world. Jasper stirred, his eyes opening to slits. "Are you the new papa?" he whispered. "No, just a doctor." "Oh," he seemed disappointed. "Mama said we might get a new papa someday. Maybe you will. But that's not me. I'm just here to help you get better." He accepted this with the easy logic of childhood and closed his eyes again. I sat there in the lamplight, listening to the breathing of two boys I'd met 6 hours ago in a house that wasn't mine, bound by a contract to a woman whose grief matched my own. Somewhere in Boston, 3 widows were probably still waiting for me to answer their letters, asking why I'd let their husbands die, asking if there was anything I could have done differently. I'd never written back. Couldn't find words that didn't feel like more lies. But here in this warm kitchen that smelled like sage and sickness, maybe I didn't need words. Maybe I just needed to save one child at a time and hope that eventually the math of it would balance out. The night stretched on. I dozed in the chair, waking every hour to check Jasper's temperature, to adjust his blankets, to make sure his breathing stayed clear. Each time I woke, I saw Finn watching me from his corner. The boy never seemed to fully sleep, just rested with one eye open, making sure his brother was safe. Around 3 in the morning, Finn finally spoke. "Are you really staying?" "For a while." "How long's a while?" 2 years, that's when I'll turn 11. Finn's voice was matter of fact, but there was something underneath it, a calculation I didn't understand yet. "My pa left right before I turned 9. I'm sorry, don't be. Everyone leaves eventually." He rolled over facing the wall, ending the conversation. I thought about what he'd said. Everyone leaves eventually. The cynicism of it, the acceptance. This was a 9-year-old boy who'd already learned that permanence was a lie people told to make themselves feel better. I'd learned the same lesson on different terms. In field hospitals, we learned fast that some wounds couldn't be saved, some patients wouldn't make it no matter what we did. The trick was knowing which ones to fight for and which ones to let go with dignity. But how did you teach that to a child? How did you explain that sometimes leaving wasn't about not caring, but about knowing when the fight was lost? You couldn't, so you didn't. You just stayed until you couldn't anymore, and you hoped the staying mattered more than the leaving. Morning came slow and gray. Abigail appeared at dawn, already dressed, hair pinned back severe and practical. She checked Jasper's forehead with the back of her hand, the gesture so automatic it was clear she'd done it 1,000 times. "Fever's down," I told her. "I can see that." She moved to the stove, started coffee. The smell filled the kitchen, rich and dark and real. I hadn't had real coffee in 3 days of riding. Finn woke up and immediately checked on his brother before looking at me. "He's better," Finn announced, like it was a challenge, like he was daring me to contradict him. "He's stable," I corrected. "Better will take time." "How much time?" "Weeks, maybe months. Lung infections don't heal fast." Finn absorbed this, then nodded once and headed outside to do chores. Through the window, I watched him walk toward the barn, shoulders squared against the cold like a man 3 times his age. "That boy carries too much," I said. Abigail poured coffee into 2 tin cups, set one in front of me. Had to. Been the man of the house since Marcus got too sick to work. He's 9. Out here, 9 is old enough. She sat across from me, the same position as last night, but morning light changed everything. I could see her more clearly now. The calluses on her hands from ranch work. The scar on her wrist that looked like a rope burn. The way she held herself, spine straight, like relaxing would be admitting defeat. "Reverend Holt will come by later this week," she said. "Make it official. Quick ceremony. Nothing fancy. All right, after that people will expect to see us together, Church on Sundays, town meetings. You'll need to play the part. I understand. Do you? She looked at me over the rim of her cup. Because this isn't some romantic story, Dr. Mercer. This is two people using each other to survive. I need your name and your presence. You need a place to hide from whatever you're running from. That's all this is. I know. Good. Just so we're clear. But I could hear the uncertainty underneath her words, the same uncertainty I felt. Because contracts were one thing, but living with another person, sharing space and meals and the weight of daily decisions, that was something else entirely. I need to check on my horse, I said. Barn's through the back. Finn will show you. I found Finn in the barn already mucking out stalls. My horse was in the corner stall, fed and watered. The boy worked without looking at me. Thank you for taking care of him, I said. Finn shrugged. Horses need tending. Still, I appreciate it. He stopped working, leaned on his pitchfork. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why'd you really come here? And don't say it's complicated. Fair enough. I came because I made a choice 2 years ago that I can't take back. 3 men died because of that choice. Their families hate me. I hate myself. Reverend Holt said your mother needed help, and I needed a reason to keep living that didn't involve a bottle. So here I am. Finn considered this. Did you make the wrong choice? I don't know. I saved a man who went on to end the war, but I let 3 others die who had families, children. How do you weigh 1 life against 3? You can't, Finn said. That's what Pa used to say. Some math doesn't work. Your father sounds like he was wise. He was. For a long moment, Finn just looked at me. Then, you going to hurt my ma? No. You going to leave when things get hard? Not unless she asks me to. Everyone says that. Then they leave anyway. I can't promise I'll never leave, Finn, but I can promise I won't leave without telling you first. No disappearing in the night. No lies about where I'm going. You deserve that much honesty. A new understanding passed between us. Not trust, exactly, but maybe the possibility of trust. Jasper likes you, he said. Jasper never likes liars. Is that a test? Everything's a test out here. You either pass or you don't. He went back to work, but the silence between us felt different now, less hostile, more waiting. I spent the rest of the morning setting up the barn loft as living quarters. It was rough but functional. A bed, a stove, a chair. Room enough for a man who didn't need much. I unpacked my medical bag, organizing supplies the way I used to organize them in field hospitals. Bandages here, medicines there. Scalpels I hoped I'd never need to use. At the bottom of the bag, wrapped in oilcloth, was the letter. 3 letters, actually, from 3 widows. I'd carried them for 2 years without opening them. Couldn't. Because opening them would mean reading words I already knew by heart. Why did you let my husband die? Couldn't you have saved him? Was his life worth less than a general's? I put the letters back without reading them. Around noon, I went back to check on Jasper. He was awake, sitting up, color better in his face. Abigail was feeding him broth, patient and methodical. Feeling better? I asked. Jasper nodded. Chest hurts less. Good. But you need to keep resting. No running around for a while. He made a face at that, but accepted it. I showed Abigail how to make the poultice, how to monitor his breathing, what signs to watch for. She learned fast, asked smart questions. This was a woman who'd already taught herself frontier medicine out of necessity. You know what you're doing, I observed. Had to learn. Town doctor's 2 days away. Can't wait that long when someone's sick. Still, you've got good instincts. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. That evening, after Finn and Jasper were fed and Jasper was sleeping again, Abigail brought me out to the barn. From her apron, she pulled out a folded contract, different from the one I'd signed last night. Terms, she said. Like before, but official. I read through it. Everything we discussed. 2 years or until the railroad matter was settled. Separate quarters. $50 a month plus room and board. Medical care for Jasper. No questions about the past. At the bottom, a new line. Either party may dissolve this marriage after year 1 with 30 days' notice. Insurance, Abigail explained, in case this doesn't work. Smart. I signed. She signed. We both stared at the paper like it was a loaded gun. "Reverend Holt comes Friday," she said. "We'll make it legal then." "All right." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Dr. Mercer?" "Yes?" "What you said last night. About the general and the 3 soldiers. Do you think you made the right choice?" I looked at her, at this woman who'd married one man while loving another, who'd lied every day for 10 years to protect everyone around her. "I think I made the only choice I could live with at the time," I said. "Whether it was right or wrong, I may never know. But I'm still here, still breathing. So I guess that's something." She nodded slowly. "That's all any of us can do, I suppose. Keep breathing until we figure out if we made the right choice." She left me alone in the barn with the contract and the weight of 2 years stretching ahead like Montana winter, long and cold and uncertain. But for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't running. I was staying. And maybe that was its own kind of choice. Friday came cold and clear. Reverend Holt arrived just after dawn in a wagon that had seen better years, pulled by a horse that looked like it survived on pure stubbornness. He was older than I expected, maybe 60, with the kind of face that had seen enough of life to stop being surprised by it. We gathered in the front room, Abigail in her best dress, which wasn't saying much, me in the only clean shirt I owned. Finn and Jasper watching from the stairs like this was a hanging instead of a wedding. The Reverend opened his Bible but didn't read from it. Instead, he looked at both of us with eyes that had married probably 100 couples and buried twice as many. "Marriage is a promise," he said, "not to each other, though that's part of it. A promise to the future you're brave enough to build together." Most people make that promise thinking they know what the future holds. You two are making it knowing you don't. That might make you smarter than most. He had us hold hands. Abigail's palm was rough with calluses, her grip firm. I could feel her pulse against my wrist, steady and strong. "Do you, Samuel Mercer, take Abigail Thornton as your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Abigail Thornton, take Samuel Mercer as your lawfully wedded husband?" A pause, just a heartbeat. But I felt it. "I do." Then, by the power vested in me by Montana Territory and the good grace of God, I pronounce you husband and wife. No kiss. We'd agreed on that beforehand, just a handshake, like sealing a business deal, which is exactly what this was. Reverend Holt handed us the marriage certificate. Our names looked strange next to each other in his careful handwriting. Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Mercer. "I'll file this in town," the Reverend said. "Make it official with the county." "Thank you," Abigail said. The Reverend looked at me then, something knowing in his expression. "Samuel, could I speak with you a moment, outside?" We stepped onto the porch. January wind cut through my shirt, but the Reverend seemed immune to cold. "How much do you know about Abigail's situation?" he asked. "What she's told me. Her husband died. Railroads pressuring her. She needs a man's name on the deed. And the boys? What about them?" The Reverend studied my face like he was deciding whether I could handle the truth. "Marcus Thornton was a good man," he said finally. "One of the best I've known. Raised both those boys like they were his own." "Were his own?" Something in the phrasing caught me. "Jasper is Marcus's biological son," the Reverend continued, "but Finn isn't." I looked through the window where Finn was helping Jasper down the stairs, patient and careful. The boy who carried too much, who tested everyone to see if they'd leave. "Does Finn know?" I asked. "No, and Abigail wants to keep it that way." Marcus raised Finn from birth, loved him completely. The boy doesn't need to know his real father abandoned Abigail before they could marry. Why are you telling me this? Because in a small town, secrets don't stay buried. And when the truth comes out, and it will, that boy is going to need a man who won't look at him differently. Can you be that man? I thought about the general I'd saved, wife, 4 children, legacy that ended a war, the 3 soldiers I'd let die, 1 single, 2 married with families. I'd done the math on value. Weighed lives like they were currency. Finn, a boy not at fault for who his father was, didn't deserve that kind of math. I won't judge a 9-year-old for something he had no control over, I said. The Reverend nodded, satisfied. Good. Because there's one more thing. What? Finn's real father. He's still in town. Works for Abigail. Who? Nathaniel Cormack, the foreman. I'd met Nate my second day. Tall man, early 40s, with hands that knew ranch work and eyes that knew regret. He'd looked at me like I was trespassing, which I suppose I was. Does Nate know you're telling me this? No, but he knows you're watching him watch Abigail, and he knows eventually you'll figure it out. And Marcus never knew? Never. Nate left town before Abigail started showing. By the time he came back with money for a wedding, she was already married. Nate never told Marcus the truth, and Abigail never told Finn. How long ago was this? 10 years. So Nate's been working here watching his son call another man PA for 10 years? Yes. That's the kind of hell I wouldn't wish on anyone. It's the hell he chose, the Reverend said. Love makes people do complicated things. He headed back to his wagon, then paused. Samuel, one more thing. Whatever you're running from, whatever choice you made that keeps you up at night, remember this. Abigail's been living with her choices for 10 years. If you can't forgive yourself, at least learn from her how to keep living anyway. He left before I could ask what he meant. Inside, Abigail was cleaning up the small wedding breakfast she'd prepared. Finn was back upstairs with Jasper. The house felt different now, heavier, like the weight of our arrangement had settled into the walls. People will expect to see us at church Sunday, Abigail said without looking at me. I know, you'll need to sit with us. Hold the hymnal, play the part. I understand. And at town meeting next week, when the railroad issue comes up, you'll need to speak. They won't listen to me. But they might listen to a man. She said it without bitterness, just fact. This was the world she lived in. What do you want me to say? I asked. That the land isn't for sale, that we're not interested in their offers, that this ranch stays in the family, our family now. She looked at me then, really looked at me. On paper, yes. Don't mistake legal binding for anything else. I won't. But even as I said it, I wondered. Because living under the same roof, eating the same meals, caring for the same children, where was the line between paper marriage and real one? How long before the pretending became truth? That first week passed in a routine that felt almost normal. I spent mornings with Jasper, monitoring his recovery. The boy was healing well, lungs clearing, color returning. He was quieter than Finn, more careful, but when he smiled it was like sun breaking through clouds. Afternoons I helped around the ranch, fence repairs, firewood, basic labor that reminded my body it wasn't just a vehicle for a medical degree. Nate worked alongside me, teaching without words, correcting my grip on an axe or my angle with a post hole digger. He never mentioned Abigail, never asked about the marriage. But I could feel the weight of everything unsaid. Evenings belonged to Finn. The boy had taken to following me around, asking questions that felt like tests. He'd pull out his father's old books, ask me to read passages about medicine or science or history, testing whether I was educated, whether I was worthy. One night I found him on the barn roof with a battered telescope. Can't sleep? I called up. Don't need much, he said. Pa used to say sleep is for people who don't have enough to think about. I climbed up, sat beside him. The Montana sky stretched out forever, stars so thick it looked like someone had spilled salt across black velvet. That's Orion, Finn said, pointing. Pa showed me before he got too sick to come outside. Your pa taught you the stars? He taught me lots of things, like how to tell if someone's lying. He said liars look away when they talk about the past. You don't. Maybe I'm a very good liar, maybe, but Jasper likes you. Jasper never likes liars, ever. We sat in comfortable silence, watching stars wheel overhead. Will you stay? Finn asked finally. Even after Jasper gets better? I signed a contract for 2 years. Contracts can't make people stay. Only reasons can. What reason would make you stay? I'm still figuring that out. Finn accepted this. He was good at accepting partial answers, storing them away for later evaluation. Down below, a light came on in the kitchen. Through the window, I could see Abigail moving around, starting early bread for tomorrow. She worked like someone who never fully rested. Like stopping would mean admitting something she couldn't afford to admit. She doesn't sleep much either, Finn observed. No, not since Pa died. Sometimes I hear her crying in the kitchen, but she stops before anyone else wakes up. That must be hard, knowing she's sad. Finn shrugged. Everyone's sad about something. Ma just hides it better than most. He climbed down without another word, heading to bed. I stayed on the roof a while longer, watching Abigail through the window. She moved with practiced efficiency, kneading dough like it had personally offended her, working through grief the only way she knew how. I understood that. Work was easier than feeling. Sunday came too soon. Church meant scrutiny. It meant performing our marriage for an audience that would judge every gesture, every glance, every moment we stood too far apart or too close together. Abigail dressed the boys in their best clothes, which weren't much better than their everyday ones. Finn's pants were too short. Jasper's shirt had been mended at the elbows, but they were clean and pressed, their hair combed down with water. She looked at me in the doorway, taking in my one good suit. "You clean up decent," she said. "So do you." And she did. Her dress was simple, dark blue, probably the same one she'd worn to Marcus's funeral. But it fit her well, showed the strength in her shoulders, the determination in the way she carried herself. We rode to town in the wagon. Nate stayed behind to watch the ranch. I caught him watching us leave, his face unreadable. The church was small, wood frame, bell tower, leaning slightly like it was tired of standing straight. People were already gathering outside, the social hour before service where news got traded and judgments got made. Conversation stopped when we arrived. I helped Abigail down from the wagon. She took my arm, playing the part of dutiful wife, but I could feel the tension in her grip. "Mrs. Thornton," a woman called out, voice sweet as poisoned honey. Or should I say Mrs. Mercer now, Mrs. Calloway. Abigail's voice was carefully neutral. Mrs. Calloway was probably 50, dressed like she was 30, made up like she was going to a dance instead of church. The kind of woman who collected gossip like other people collected stamps. Quick work, wasn't it? Mrs. Calloway's smile didn't reach her eyes. Marcus not 8 months in the ground and already remarried. Dr. Mercer and I have an understanding. Oh, I'm sure you do. Mrs. Calloway's gaze slid to me, assessing. A doctor. How fortunate. Though I heard you were a battlefield surgeon, not a practicing physician. I was. I am. Was or am. Can't be both, dear. Finn stepped between us before I could respond. Dr. Mercer saved Jasper's life, he announced. Pneumonia. Would have died without him. That's why Ma married him, because he's the best doctor in Montana. Abigail's hand tightened on my arm. Finn was lying, building me up to protect his mother's reputation, just like the Reverend had warned. Is that so, Mrs.? Calloway looked unconvinced. Well, isn't that lovely? A hero. Other women gathered around, circling like wolves who smelled blood. Must be difficult, one of them said, stepping into dear Marcus's shoes. I'm not trying to replace Marcus, I said carefully, just trying to help Abigail and the boys. Of course, Mrs. Calloway's tone suggested she didn't believe a word. Well, we're all very happy for you. Both of you, such a fortunate arrangement. The way she said arrangement made it clear what she thought this marriage was, a desperate widow and an opportunistic stranger. Inside the church, I sat beside Abigail in what must have been the Thornton family pew. 4th row, right side, worn wood that held the shape of years of sitting. Finn pressed close to me on one side, Jasper on the other, like they were claiming me. Or maybe protecting me. Reverend Holt's sermon was about charity and Christian kindness. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. After service came the real trial, the social hour in the churchyard where everyone pretended to be friendly while sharpening their knives. I watched Abigail navigate it with practiced grace, accepting congratulations that weren't sincere, deflecting questions about our courtship, which hadn't existed, holding her head high while women who'd probably never worked a day in their lives judged her for marrying too soon, too practically, too honestly. Finn stayed close, jumping into conversations to embellish my credentials. I was a famous surgeon from Boston. I'd saved a governor's life. I'd studied in Europe. Each lie bigger than the last. I caught him after the third fabrication. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly. "Doing what?" "Lying about me, making me sound more important than I am. If people think you're important, they won't ask why Mom married you so fast. They'll just think she's smart." "Finn, lying doesn't protect your mother. It makes people trust her less when they find out." His jaw set, stubborn. "You don't know what it's like here. Everyone whispers about Ma. They say she's too strong, too independent, that she drove Pa to death by working him too hard. If I don't make you sound good, they'll say she married a nobody because nobody else would have her." The pain in his voice was real. This 9-year-old boy was trying to defend his mother's honor with the only weapons he had, words and lies. I crouched down, eye level with him. "Finn, your mother doesn't need defending. She's one of the strongest people I've ever met, and anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about." "You don't understand. Then help me understand." He looked away, jaw working. "They said the same things about Pa, that he wasn't good enough for her, that she only married him because she had to, that he knew she didn't love him, and that's why he got sick. Like being sad made him die." "Oh, Finn," I heard Nate say it, when he thought no one was listening. "He told Mr. Drummond that Marcus knew Ma never loved him, that it killed him more than the sickness did." I felt something cold settle in my chest, because I'd seen the way Abigail held herself, the guilt she carried. And now I understood where it came from. "When did you hear this?" I asked. "Last week? When Mr. Drummond came about the railroad. We need to tell your mother." "No, she'll just feel worse, and it won't change anything." "Finn, these are grown-up problems. You don't have to carry them. Someone has to." His eyes were too old, too knowing, and it might as well be me. That evening, after the boys were in bed, I found Abigail in the barn. She was checking on a horse that had thrown a shoe, working by lantern light. "We need to talk," I said. "About?" "About Finn and the lies he's telling." She didn't look up from the horse's hoof. "I know about the lies." "Do you know why he's telling them?" She set down the hoof, straightened. "Because he thinks he needs to protect me." He overheard Nate talking about Marcus, about how Marcus knew you didn't love him. Her face went very still. "When?" "Last week." "What exactly did he hear?" "That Marcus knew. That it killed him. That you only married him because you had to." She turned away, but not before I saw the pain flash across her face. Nate had no right. Maybe not, but was he wrong? She spun back, anger bright in her eyes. "You want the truth, Dr. Mercer?" "Fine. Here's the truth. I married Marcus because I was 18 and pregnant, and my father would have thrown me out if I didn't find a husband fast," Marcus offered. "He knew I didn't love him. I told him that before we married. He said someday I might, and even if I didn't, he'd love me enough for both of us." She was breathing hard now, years of held-back words spilling out. "He kept that promise. Every single day for 10 years, he loved me. And every single day for 10 years, I tried to love him back. I cared for him, respected him. But I never felt what I'd felt with Nate. And Marcus knew. God help me, he knew. Did he resent you? No. That was the worst part. He was so understanding. Even when he was dying, he held my hand and said he didn't regret a single day. But I did. I regretted every day I couldn't give him what he deserved." She sank down onto a hay bale, all the fight gone out of her. So yes, Nate was right. Marcus knew I didn't love him. And maybe that did make him sadder. Maybe it did make him sicker. I'll never know. But I have to live with it either way. I sat beside her, careful to leave space between us. "You gave him 10 years, I said. You gave him a son who loved him. You stayed when you could have left. That's not nothing. But it wasn't love. Maybe love isn't just a feeling. Maybe it's also a choice. You chose him every day for 10 years. That's a kind of love." She looked at me, eyes red but tearless. Is that what you tell yourself about the general and the soldiers? Every day. That I made a choice, that it was the only choice I could live with. That choice is its own kind of love, even when it feels like betrayal. We sat there in the lantern light, two people carrying the weight of choices that couldn't be unmade. Finally, Abigail spoke. When the contract ends, what will you do? I don't know. Maybe set up practice in town. Would you consider staying? Not because of the contract, because the boys need you, because Finn trusts you, and I... She stopped. Because you what? Before she could answer, we heard it. A small sound from the barn door. We both turned. Finn stood there, face pale in the darkness. Ma, I need to tell you something. Finn, you should be in bed, I lied. To Mrs. Calloway. And Mr. Drummond. And everyone at church. I told them Doc Mercer was famous, that he saved important people, that you married him because he was special. Finn, why? Because I didn't want them to think you married him because you're desperate. Because I didn't want them to talk about you like they talked about Pa. What did they say about your Pa? His face crumpled, that he wasn't good enough for you, that you only married him because you had to, that he knew you didn't love him, and that's why he got sick, because he was sad all the time. Abigail stood so fast the lantern swayed. Finn, who told you that? I heard it last week. Nate was talking to Mr. Drummond. He said Marcus knew you never loved him. Said he thought that's what killed Pa more than the sickness. Abigail's hands were shaking. Finn, that's not true. But Finn was crying now, 9 years of held-back grief pouring out. You said yourself you didn't love him. I heard you just now. You told Doc Mercer you tried but couldn't. So Nate was right. And if Nate was right, then maybe I'm the reason. Maybe if I'd been better, if I'd been Pa's real son, you would have loved him more. Oh, Finn. Abigail dropped to her knees, drew him into her arms. He resisted for a moment, then collapsed into her embrace, sobbing. I watched them there in the lantern light. Mother and son. Both carrying guilt that wasn't theirs to carry. Both trying to protect each other from truths that hurt. I stepped outside to give them privacy. The night was cold and clear, stars sharp as broken glass. Behind me, I could hear Abigail's voice, low and fierce. Listen to me. Your father loved you, completely. You were his son in every way that mattered. And I did love him. Maybe not the way storybooks talk about love, but I loved him for his goodness, his patience, his kindness. That's real love too, but you said you tried and couldn't. I tried to love him the way I loved Nate, the wild, desperate way. But that's not the only kind of love, Finn. There's also the steady kind, the kind that shows up every day, the kind that stays. And that's what I gave your father, every single day for 10 years. I leaned against the barn wall thinking about choices and love and the complicated math of human hearts. Inside, Finn's crying slowed. Do you love Doc Mercer? He asked. A long pause. I don't know him well enough yet to love him, but I respect him, and I trust him. And maybe someday that could turn into love, the steady kind. Another pause. Would that be okay? If I loved someone new? Finn's voice was very small. I think Pa would want you to be happy. I think so too. When they came out, both their faces were red but calm. Finn looked at me. Sorry I lied about you. I understand why you did it. Doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it human. He nodded, accepting this, then headed back to the house. Abigail and I stood there in the darkness. I'm sorry you had to hear all that, she said. Don't be. I asked for honesty. That's what you gave me. She looked up at the stars, the same stars Finn had shown me from the roof. When I married Marcus, I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting my reputation, protecting Finn, giving them both a stable life. But all I did was trap 3 people in a lie that hurt everyone. You gave Finn a father. You gave Marcus a family. That's not nothing. It wasn't enough. It never is. I saved a general who ended a war. But it wasn't enough for the 3 families who lost fathers, husbands, sons. We do what we can with the choices we have. The rest is just learning to live with it. She turned to me then. How do you live with it? I don't know yet. I'm still figuring that out. Let me know when you do. She went back to the house, leaving me alone with the stars and the cold and the weight of everything unsaid. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Finn's tears, Abigail's guilt, Marcus's ghost that hung over everything like smoke. Around midnight I heard footsteps on the barn ladder. Finn appeared in the loft, wrapped in a quilt. Can't sleep either? I asked. He shook his head, sat on the edge of my bed. Doc? Yes? Do you think you made the wrong choice? With the general and the soldiers? I think I made the only choice I could live with at the time. But that doesn't mean I don't wish there'd been another way. Ma said the same thing. About Pa, I know. So maybe everyone's just making choices and wishing they'd made different ones. Maybe so. That sounds hard. It is. Finn pulled the quilt tighter. I'm glad you're here. Even if it's just for 2 years. Even if it's just because of a contract. Me too, Finn. He stayed a few more minutes, then headed back to the house. I watched him go, this boy carrying the weight of adult problems with the shoulders of a child. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and steady, covering the ground in fresh white, like the world trying to start over. I thought about Abigail's question. When the contract ends, would I stay? 2 years felt like forever, and no time at all, long enough to heal a child, long enough to repair fences and build routines, maybe even long enough to turn a paper marriage into something real. But forever? That was a different kind of choice. I fell asleep thinking about choices and consequences, about the general who lived and the soldiers who died, about Marcus who loved and Abigail who tried, about Finn who lied to protect and Nate who stayed when he should have left. All of us just trying to make the right choice with the information we had. All of us just trying to survive our own decisions. All of us just hoping that in the end, the staying would matter more than the leaving. 6 weeks changes everything and nothing. Jasper's cough was almost gone. The rattle in his lungs had cleared to the point where Dr. Miriam Yates, when she visited on her monthly circuit, declared him on the mend. Not cured, she warned. Tuberculosis doesn't cure easy, but managing, living. Living was more than I'd hoped for that first night. Finn had stopped lying about me, mostly. He still defended his mother with the fierce loyalty of a soldier, but now he used truth as his weapon instead of fabrication. Doc Mercer helped Jasper when no one else could. Doc Mercer knows medicine better than anyone in 3 counties. Doc Mercer doesn't think Ma is desperate, he thinks she's smart. That last one might have been a stretch, but it was closer to honest than famous surgeon from Boston, and Abigail and I had fallen into something that resembled partnership. We worked the ranch together, made decisions about which fence needed repair, which cattle needed selling, how to stretch winter feed until spring grass came in. She asked my opinion. I gave it. Sometimes she took my advice. Sometimes she ignored it. Both felt right. But underneath the routine, tension built like pressure behind a dam. The railroad issue was coming to a head. Isaac Drummond arrived on a Tuesday morning, riding in a company wagon with 2 men I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed for frontier territory, with the kind of confidence that came from having Eastern money behind him. "Mrs. Thornton," he called from the wagon, "or is it Mrs. Mercer now? My apologies, I haven't kept up with local news." Abigail set down the bucket she'd been carrying, wiped her hands on her apron. "It's Mrs. Mercer. What can I do for you, Mr. Drummond? I'm here on behalf of the Montana Central Railroad. We've finalized our route survey. I wanted to discuss it with you personally before the town meeting next week. There's nothing to discuss. My answer hasn't changed." Isaac climbed down from the wagon, pulled out a rolled map. "Perhaps if you saw the survey, you'd reconsider." "May I?" Abigail's jaw tightened, but she nodded. We followed him to the porch where he unrolled the map, weighing down corners with rocks. The blue line cut straight through the heart of Thornton Ranch. "As you can see," he said, "the most efficient route runs directly through your southern pasture. We'd need approximately 40 acres, including the area where your main water source is located." "That's our best grazing land," Abigail said. "I understand. which is why we're prepared to offer $8,000. That's twice the market value, plus relocation assistance to comparable land 15 miles north. I'm not interested in land 15 miles north. This is my home." Isaac's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened slightly. "Mrs. Mercer, I respect your position, but the railroad is coming through this valley whether you sell or not. The only question is whether you profit from it. Is that a threat? It's a fact. If you refuse to sell, the company will petition for eminent domain. You'll lose the land anyway and receive half the compensation." Abigail's hands curled into fists. "This land has been in my family for 30 years. My husband is buried here. I'm not selling the ground he rests on so you can lay train tracks over his grave." Isaac glanced at me as if expecting me to talk sense into her. "Dr. Mercer, perhaps you could help your wife see reason." "My wife sees perfectly well," I said. "If she says the land isn't for sale, it isn't for sale." Her face softened slightly at my words. Isaac sighed, rolled up his map. "I was hoping we could settle this amicably. The board of directors won't be pleased. Then they can be displeased somewhere else." After he left, Abigail stood on the porch staring at the road long after his wagon disappeared. "Why is this land so important?" I asked. "It's good grazing, but there's better land north, like he said." She turned to me, and I saw determination mixed with something deeper. Desperation. Because Marcus built this ranch with his bare hands. Every fence post, every building, every irrigation ditch. This place was his dream. And when he was dying, when the sickness had taken everything else, he made me promise I'd keep it for the boys, that I'd give them the legacy he couldn't, even if keeping it means losing everything. A promise is a promise, Dr. Mercer. You of all people should understand that. She was right. I understood promises. I'd made one to save as many lives as I could. I'd broken it every time I chose one patient over another. That afternoon, Nate found me repairing fence in the north pasture. "Railroad's not going to give up," he said, handing me wire cutters. "I know. Neither is Abigail. I know that too." We worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of labor filling the space where conversation should be. Finally, Nate spoke. "You know about Finn. It wasn't a question. Reverend Holt told me. And you stayed anyway. Why wouldn't I? Most men would have run, raising another man's bastard while the real father watches from across the yard. That's a particular kind of hell. Is that what this is for you?" He drove a fence post with more force than necessary, every single day. Watching him grow up, seeing myself in his face, his gestures, the way he thinks, knowing he'll never call me Pa, never know the truth. "Why didn't you tell Marcus?" "Because Marcus was my friend, and because Abigail asked me not to. She said Finn deserved a father who could give him a whole heart, not a divided one. Marcus could do that. I couldn't. But you stayed, I stayed. Worked for my best friend, watched him raise my son, fell more in love with Abigail every day while she tried to love him. You want to know what hell is, Doc? Hell is getting exactly what you deserve." He pushed off from the stall door, picked up his pitchfork. "What do you want me to do about it? Tell the truth. To Abigail? To Finn? To Maggie? Stop letting this secret poison everything. And then what? Finn learns his whole life is a lie. Abigail loses the last bit of peace she has. Maggie finally has proof her husband never loved her. What good does truth do if it just destroys people?" I thought about that, about truth and lies, and which one caused more damage. "I think people are stronger than you give them credit for," I said finally. "I think they'd rather live with hard truth than comfortable lies." "You're wrong, maybe, but I'm tired of watching everyone I care about suffer because they're too scared to be honest." I left him in the barn and went to find Abigail. She was in the kitchen making breakfast, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. "We need to talk," I said. "If this is about yesterday, about what I asked you, forget it. I shouldn't have put you on the spot like that. This isn't about that. This is about Finn. What about him? He knows. About Nate. About Marcus's letter. He's known for a year." Abigail's hands stopped moving. "That's not possible. It is, he told me last night. She gripped the edge of the counter like she needed it to stay upright. What exactly did he say? That he found a letter from Marcus. That Marcus knew he wasn't Finn's biological father. That Marcus promised to love him anyway. Oh God. She sat down hard in the chair. I was going to tell him, when he was older, when he could understand. When would that be? 13? 18? 25? There's no good age to learn your whole childhood was built on a lie. It wasn't a lie. Marcus was his father in every way that mattered. I know that. You know that. But does Finn? She looked up at me, eyes bright with unshed tears. What do I tell him? The truth. That you loved Nate, but your father forbade the marriage. That Nate left to make money. That Marcus offered to marry you to protect you and Finn both. That he loved Finn completely, without reservation. That biology doesn't make a father, love does. And Nate? What do I tell him about Nate? That Nate is still here, still waiting, still hoping. And that you need to make a choice about that. I already made my choice. I married Marcus. Marcus is dead. You're alive. And you're using his memory as a shield to keep from dealing with the present. She stood, anger flashing. You have no right. I have every right. I'm your husband, remember? Maybe only on paper, but that paper means I'm invested in this family's well-being. And right now, this family is being torn apart by secrets nobody has the courage to confront. What do you want from me? I want you to stop running. Stop hiding behind guilt and duty and promises to dead men. Stop making everyone around you carry the weight of choices you made a decade ago. She stared at me, breathing hard. You think you understand. You think because you made one hard choice in a war, you know what it's like to live with regret every single day. You don't. You got to run. You got to leave Boston and become someone new. I had to stay here and look at my choices every single morning in the mirror. You're right. I don't understand. I ran. But you did something harder. You stayed. You kept promises even when they hurt. You built a life out of obligation and somehow made it work. Then why are you pushing me to destroy it? I'm not. I'm pushing you to be honest about it. There's a difference. The door burst open. Finn stood there, chest heaving like he'd run from the barn. Stop, he said. Both of you, just stop. Finn, Abigail started. I don't want to hear it, Ma. I don't want to hear how you were protecting me or how Pa loved me or how complicated it all is. I just want one person to tell me the truth without making it sound like a story. He looked at me. You want truth? Here it is. Nate's my father. Marcus raised me. You married Ma because she needed a name on the deed and you needed to hide. Everyone's using everyone else and calling it family. Tears streamed down his face, but his voice stayed steady. And you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being protected. I'm tired of secrets. I'm tired of watching adults lie to each other and pretend it's love. He wiped his face with his sleeve. So here's my truth. I loved Pa, Marcus, the man who raised me. I loved him because he showed up every day even though he was sad, even though Ma didn't love him back, even though Nate was always there watching. He chose me every single day. That makes him my father. He turned to Abigail. And Ma, you did what you had to do. I don't blame you, but stop blaming yourself. Pa didn't die because you didn't love him enough. He died because he got sick. That's not your fault. Then he looked back at me. And Doc, you're here because you feel guilty about 3 soldiers, but staying here won't bring them back, and leaving won't make the guilt go away. You have to decide what you want, not what you think you owe. He stood there, 9 years old, but talking like he'd lived 40. I'm going to check on Jasper. He left. The silence he left behind was enormous. Abigail sat back down, all the fight gone out of her. When did he get so wise? When we stopped giving him permission to be a child. She laughed, but it came out like a sob. I've made such a mess of everything. We all have. I sat across from her, the same position as our first night. Different conversation, same weight. Abigail, I said carefully, about yesterday. When you asked if I'd stay for you, I gave you a terrible answer. You were honest. I was scared. I'm still scared. But I need you to know something. She looked up. When I came here, I was drowning. In guilt, in grief, in the weight of choices I couldn't take back. I thought I was doing you a favor, being your husband on paper, protecting you from the railroad and gossip and whatever else. You were. But somewhere between teaching Finn medicine and watching Jasper heal and arguing with you about whether to sell the south pasture to Hendricks, I stopped drowning. I started living again. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying I don't know if what I feel is love, but I know it's real, and I know it matters. And I know that when I think about leaving in 18 months, my chest gets tight and my hands shake, and I feel like I'm making the wrong choice all over again. So you want to stay? I want to try, not because of the contract, not because of the boys, because of you. Because I think maybe we could build something real out of this arrangement, if you're willing. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know if I can love you the way I loved Nate. I don't need you to. I need you to love me the way you loved Marcus, the steady kind, the showing up kind, the building this life together kind. She reached across the table, took my hand. Her grip was strong, certain. I can do that. So can I. We sat there holding hands across the kitchen table while morning light poured through the windows. Two broken people trying to build something whole. The barn door opened. Nate stepped inside, and behind him a woman I'd seen in town but never met, Maggie Cormack. Nate's wife. She was handsome in a weathered way, probably 40, with eyes that had seen too much and a mouth set firm with determination. "Abigail," Maggie said, "we need to talk." Nate looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "Maggie, maybe this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. I've waited 10 years. I'm not waiting another day." She walked to the table, stood directly across from Abigail. "I've known about you and Nate since the day he came back to town. I saw the way he looked at you, at Finn. I'm not stupid." "Maggie," Abigail started, "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here because my husband has been half-living for 10 years, and I'm tired of being married to a ghost." She turned to Nate. "You have a choice. You can keep loving a woman who doesn't love you back, pining for a child who will never call you Pa. Or you can come home, be a real husband to me, and maybe, just maybe, we can build something real." Nate opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Abigail like he was drowning, and she was sure. "Nate," Abigail said gently, "Maggie's right. Abby, please, I loved you. 20 years ago I loved you more than I thought possible, but that was 20 years ago. We're different people now, and I think we've both been using that old love as an excuse to avoid living our actual lives." She stood, walked to where Nate was standing. "You're Finn's biological father, that's true, but Marcus earned being his pa, and I think you know that. I think you've always known that. You just used Finn as an excuse to stay close to something you couldn't have. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. But we can choose to be honest about it." She put her hand on his arm, gentle but firm. "You're a good man, Nate. You've been loyal and hard-working and patient beyond reason, but it's time to let go for both our sakes. And Finn? Finn knows you're his biological father. He's known for a year, and he's chosen Marcus, just like I'm choosing Sam. And you need to choose Maggie." Nate looked at his wife, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. "Maggie, I'm sorry. I don't want sorry. I want you, all of you, not the pieces left over after you've given the best parts to someone else. I don't know if I can. Then figure it out, because I'm not living like this anymore. Either you come home, really home, or I'm done." She walked out, spine straight as a fence post. Nate stood there, torn between past and present. "Go," Abigail said, "before it's too late." He went, moving slow like a man walking into wind. But he went. After they left, I drew Abigail into my arms. She leaned into me, exhausted. "That was brave," I said. "That was terrifying. Necessary, too." "Yes, that too." We stood there in the morning light, holding each other. Not kissing, not even really romantic. Just two people who'd finally committed to honesty over comfort. The door opened again, Finn this time, with Jasper behind him. "Is Nate gone?" Finn asked. "For now. Good." Finn's face was carefully neutral. He needed to go. "Are you all right?" I don't know. Maybe. Ask me later. That evening, after the boys were in bed, Abigail and I sat on the porch watching stars come out. Tomorrow's the town meeting, she said. Isaac Drummond will want an answer. What do you want to do? Keep the land. Keep the promise. Keep fighting. Even if you lose? Even if I lose. At least I'll lose on my feet instead of my knees. I took her hand. Then we'll lose together. She smiled, real and warm and tired. You know what the strangest part is? What? For 10 years, I was married to Marcus and felt alone. Now I'm married to you, barely know you, and I feel less alone than I've ever been. Maybe that's because we're both choosing this. We're not here out of obligation or necessity. We're here because we want to be. Are we? She asked quietly. Or are we just telling ourselves that to make the contract feel less cold? I thought about that. About choices and wanting and the space between the two. I think we started that way. But I don't think we're there anymore. What changed? Everything. Nothing. You. Me. The way Finn looks at us like we might actually stay. The way Jasper calls me Doc instead of Mr. Mercer. The way you take my hand without thinking when we walk to church. Small things, but they add up. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Sam? Yes? Ask me again about staying. I pulled back, looked at her in the starlight. When the contract ends, would you want me to stay? Yes. Not for the boys, not for the railroad, not for any practical reason. Just because I think I could love you, given time. And I think I'm already halfway there. I kissed her then, gentle at first, then deeper. Her hands came up to my face, holding me like I was something precious that might disappear. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. That was, she started, worth waiting for? Yes. We sat there under Montana stars, holding each other, building this life together, choosing each other, creating something new from the broken pieces of our pasts. Tomorrow would bring the railroad meeting, hard choices, possible loss. But tonight, we had this. Two people learning to love again, learning to trust again. Learning that sometimes the best choices are the ones you make with your eyes wide open, knowing full well the cost, choosing anyway. Inside, I heard Finn's voice reading to Jasper, some story about knights and dragons and impossible quests. Fitting, because that's what we were doing, fighting dragons, surviving impossible odds, building kingdoms out of broken promises and second chances, and maybe, just maybe, we'd find our own kind of happily ever after. Not the storybook kind. The earned kind, the real kind, the kind that came from standing by each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. 3 days after the kiss, everything changed. Not in the way I expected. Not with declarations or promises or any of the things people imagine happen when two people finally admit they might be falling in love. It changed because Jasper started coughing blood again. I woke to Finn pounding on the barn door at 4 a.m, his voice cracking with panic. Doc, come quick, Jasper's bad. I was down the ladder and running before I was fully awake. In the house, Abigail sat on the floor cradling Jasper, who was gasping between wet, rattling coughs. Blood stained his nightshirt, his lips, his mother's hands. How long? I asked, already reaching for his wrist to check his pulse. 20 minutes, maybe more. I didn't want to leave him to get you. His pulse was fast, thready, fever burning through him like wildfire. I listened to his lungs and heard the death rattle I'd learned to recognize in field hospitals, fluid building, lungs drowning him from the inside. We need to get him to Denver, I said. Now. Tonight. Abigail looked up, face pale. Denver's 3 days away. Then we leave in an hour. Pack light. Medical supplies only. I'll need every herb we have. All the willow bark. Everything. Sam, we can't afford Denver. The specialists there, the hospital fees, I don't care about the money. But I do. We're already stretched thin with the railroad dispute. I can't. She stopped because Jasper coughed again, more blood coming up. I'll figure out the money, I said. Right now he needs care we can't provide here. Abigail started to argue, then saw something in my face that stopped her. This was doctor talking, not husband. And doctor didn't negotiate. "Finn," I said, "go wake Nate. Tell him we need the wagon ready in 30 minutes. Fastest team we have." The boy ran. I worked through the next hour on pure instinct, stabilizing Jasper enough to travel, making poultices to slow the bleeding, doses of medicine I'd been saving for emergencies. This qualified. Nate appeared as promised, wagon ready, team fresh. He'd even thrown blankets in the back, created a nest for Jasper to lie in. "I'm coming with you," he said. "No," Abigail's voice was firm. "You stay here. Keep the ranch running. If Isaac Drummond comes back, tell him we'll have an answer after we return." Abigail, "Please, Nate, I need to know someone I trust is protecting what's ours." He nodded slowly, stepped back. But before we could leave, he reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope. $600, he said. "Everything I've saved for 10 years. For Jasper. Get him to Denver." Abigail's eyes filled. "Nate, I can't." "Yes, you can, because he's worth more than land. And he's worth more than my pride." He looked at Finn, who stood watching with 2 old eyes. "Because 10 years ago, I left when I should have stayed. I'm not making that mistake again." Finn stepped forward, and for a moment I thought he'd hug Nate. Instead, he extended his hand for a shake. Man to man. "Thank you," Finn said, "for taking care of Ma, for taking care of us." Nate shook the boy's hand, his own trembling slightly. "Take care of your brother, I will." We loaded Jasper into the wagon. Abigail climbed in back with him. Finn sat up front with me. As we pulled away, I saw Nate standing in the yard, watching us go. Maggie appeared beside him, took his hand. He didn't pull away. The ride to Denver took 4 days. 4 days of monitoring Jasper's breathing, changing blood-soaked bandages, stopping every few hours to brew medicine over roadside fires. 4 days of watching Abigail hold her dying son and refuse to let him go. 4 days of Finn being braver than any 9-year-old should have to be. We pushed hard, stopping only when the horses couldn't continue. I drove through 2 nights, Finn spelling me when exhaustion made my hands shake on the reins. The boy learned to drive a wagon team in the dark, learned to read the road by starlight, learned what it meant to fight for someone you love. On the 3rd night, camped beside the road, Jasper's breathing changed, slowed, became shallow. Abigail looked at me, and I saw the question in her eyes, the one no parent should have to ask. "Is he dying?" I checked his pulse, listened to his lungs, felt the fever that wouldn't break. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably. But we're 12 hours from Denver. If we push through the night, we might make it. And if we don't, then at least we tried everything." She nodded, held her son closer. Finn appeared at my elbow. "We should keep going," he said. "Jasper would want us to keep going." "How do you know?" "Because that's what Pa taught us. You don't quit just because something's hard. You quit when there's no fight left. And Jasper's still fighting. I can see it." The boy was right. Jasper's eyes still moved behind closed lids. His hands still clenched when he coughed. He was fighting. We drove through the night. Denver appeared at dawn like a mirage, bigger than any town I'd seen since leaving Boston. Buildings 3 stories tall, paved streets, electric lights. The modern world I'd been running from. St. Luke's Hospital sat on a hill overlooking the city. Red brick, clean windows, the smell of carbolic and hope. I carried Jasper through the doors. A nurse tried to stop me, said visiting hours weren't until 9. I showed her my medical credentials, told her I was a doctor bringing in a critical patient. She looked at my filthy clothes, my unshaven face, the wild desperation in my eyes. Then she looked at Jasper and called for help. They took him immediately, carried him to a ward where doctors in clean white coats swarmed around him with stethoscopes and thermometers and practiced efficiency. I tried to follow, but a doctor stopped me. "Are you family? I'm his stepfather. Then you need to wait outside. We'll update you when we know more. I'm also a physician. I can help." "Doctor, with respect, you look like you haven't slept in 4 days. You need rest. We'll take care of the boy." The door closed in my face. I stood there, swaying with exhaustion, trying to process what had just happened. For 4 days I'd been in control, making decisions, keeping Jasper alive through sheer will and medical knowledge. Now I was just another worried father in a waiting room. Abigail found me there. She'd cleaned up somehow, washed her face, pinned her hair, but her eyes were hollow with fear. What did they say? They're examining him now. She sat beside me on a hard wooden bench. Finn appeared with coffee in tin cups, handed them out like he'd been doing this his whole life. We sat. We waited. Hours passed. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon became evening. Nurses walked past with their eyes carefully averted, the way medical staff do when news is bad. Finally, a doctor emerged. Young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and careful hands. "Mr. Mercer?" "Yes, I'm Dr. Harrison Webb. I've been treating your son. How is he?" "Alive, stabilized, but barely. The tuberculosis has progressed significantly. Both lungs are affected. There's substantial scarring. Can you save him?" Dr. Webb sat down beside us, and I knew what was coming. I delivered this speech myself 100 times. I can treat him, keep him comfortable. But tuberculosis at this stage, with this level of involvement, the prognosis isn't good. 6 months, maybe a year if he responds well to treatment. Abigail made a sound like something breaking. "But there's a new treatment, doctor." Webb continued. "Experimental, being pioneered by Dr. Edward Trudeau in New York. Fresh air therapy combined with nutritional support and complete rest. It's shown promising results in early-stage cases. Jasper isn't early stage, no. But he's young, strong, and he has family willing to fight for him. That matters more than you'd think. What would the treatment involve? He'd need to stay here, in our sanatorium ward. Minimum 3 months, possibly 6. Complete bed rest, controlled diet. Monitored exercise as he improves." Abigail stood, walked to the window. "How much?" she asked quietly. "The treatment itself is experimental, so there's no standard fee. But the hospitalization, the nursing care, the specialized diet, you're looking at roughly $200 per month, $600 for 3 months, the exact amount Nate had given us." "We'll do it," I said. "Sam," Abigail turned, "we can't. The ranch, the railroad, we need that money. The ranch doesn't matter if Jasper's dead, but it's his legacy, what we're fighting to keep for him. Then what good is it if he's not alive to inherit it?" She looked at me, then at Finn, then back at the doctor. "Can we see him?" "Of course." They led us to a bright room with white walls and clean sheets. Jasper lay in a bed that looked enormous around his small frame. His eyes were closed, but his breathing was easier, regular. Abigail sat beside him, took his hand. "I'm here, baby." "Mama's here." His eyes fluttered open. "Are we in Denver?" "We're in Denver. You're going to stay here for a while. Get strong again." "Will you stay too?" She looked at me. "I'll stay," I said. "Your mama needs to go back to the ranch, but I'll be here every day. Promise?" "Promise." He closed his eyes, reassured. Outside the room, Abigail grabbed my arm. "You can't stay. The railroad meeting is in 3 days. If we're not there, they'll take the land by default. Then you go. Represent us." "I'll stay with Jasper." "Sam, you're the only one they'll listen to. You're the doctor who proved the land is medically necessary. Without you there, we lose. Then we lose. You don't mean that, I do. I spent 2 years running from the choice I made, choosing one life over 3. I'm not making that choice again. I'm not choosing land over your son." Her eyes filled with tears. "But it's not just land. It's his future, his legacy. His future is breathing. Everything else we can rebuild. I can't ask you to sacrifice your credibility for us. You're not asking. I'm choosing." She held me against her, buried her face in my chest. I felt her shoulders shake with silent sobs. Finn cleared his throat. I could go back. We both turned to look at him. "Absolutely not," Abigail said. "I'm 9. I know the ranch. I know what needs to be said. I'll go with Nate to the meeting. Tell them what Doc would say. Finn, you're a child." "So? Children don't get to stand up for their family?" His chin was set in that stubborn way that reminded me so much of Abigail. "I'll write down exactly what to say," I offered. "Medical testimony, legal arguments, everything the judge needs to hear. And I'll practice until I can say it perfect," Finn added. Abigail looked between us, torn. "This is crazy. This is family," I said. "And family does crazy things for each other." That night, Finn and I worked in the hospital waiting room. I wrote out testimony, arguments, rebuttals. Finn memorized every word, practicing his delivery until he sounded like a lawyer 3 times his age. Abigail watched us, shaking her head. "He sounds more convincing than I would. He's fighting for his brother. That makes him dangerous." The next morning, Finn left for Thornton Ranch on the first stage, 12 hours of hard travel. Nate would meet him in town. Before he left, I pulled him aside. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." "Jasper saved me." "What do you mean? When Pa died, I wanted to die too. Felt like nothing mattered. Then Jasper got sick and I realized if he died, Ma would break. And if Ma broke, there'd be nothing left. So I stayed alive for them. Now I need to save what's theirs, so when Jasper comes home, he has something to come home to. That's a heavy burden for a boy. Good thing I'm not just a boy anymore." He climbed onto the stage, waved once, and was gone. The days that followed blurred together. I stayed at the hospital, sleeping in a chair beside Jasper's bed. Dr. Webb gave me access to medical texts on the new tuberculosis treatments. I read everything, looking for any edge, any chance to improve Jasper's odds. Abigail stayed too, though the nurses tried to send her to a boarding house. She refused. Said she'd slept on harder floors than hospital waiting rooms. We existed in a strange limbo. Not quite patients, not quite staff. Just 2 desperate people watching a child fight for his life. On the 3rd night, Dr. Webb found me in the medical library. "You were a battlefield surgeon," he said. "Not a question. How'd you know? The way you triage, the way you assess wounds, the way you make decisions under pressure, you have that look." "I was. During the war." "Why'd you stop?" "Because I made a choice I couldn't live with. Saved 1 man at the cost of 3 others. Seemed like the math made sense at the time. The 1 man was important, a general. The 3 were just soldiers." Dr. Webb sat down across from me. "And now? Now I'm not sure there's such a thing as just a soldier, or just a child, or just anyone. Every life has infinite value to someone." So what changed? I met a woman who spent 10 years trying to love a man out of obligation. Met a boy who lied to protect his mother's honor. Met another boy who fought tuberculosis because dying would hurt the people who love him. They taught me that value isn't measured in ranks or importance or utility. It's measured in connections, in love, in the space between people who stand by each other. Dr. Webb smiled. "You sound like you've been doing some thinking. 4 days on a wagon gives you time." The doctor stood, handed me a journal. "There's an article in there, page 43, about a new technique for treating advanced tuberculosis. Involves a temporary pneumothorax, collapsing the diseased lung to give it time to heal. It's risky, mortality rate of 30%. But for cases like Jasper's, it might be the only chance." I flipped to the article, read quickly. The technique was radical, dangerous, experimental. "And you're willing to try it? Only with parental consent, and only if you assist. I've done 3 of these procedures. You've probably got steadier hands than anyone in this hospital." "I haven't practiced medicine in 2 years, doctor." "Mercer, you've been practicing medicine for 4 days straight. You just didn't recognize it as practicing." I looked at the journal, at the diagrams showing needle placement, the delicate balance between collapse and catastrophic failure. "When?" "Tomorrow. If the parents consent. If you consent. If the boy is strong enough." "I'll talk to Abigail." I found her in Jasper's room, holding his hand while he slept. "There's a procedure," I said, "risky, but it might give him a real chance." I explained the technique, the risks, the potential benefits. She listened without interrupting, her face growing paler with each detail. 30% die?" she asked when I finished. "Yes." "And the other 70%? Some recover fully, some improve but remain chronically ill. Some respond initially, then relapse. So there's no guarantee. There's never a guarantee. But doing nothing is a guarantee. He'll die within 6 months. This gives him a chance to live years, maybe decades." She looked at her son, so small, in the hospital bed. What do you think we should do? I think we should ask him. He's 6 years old. He's old enough to know he's dying, old enough to feel his lungs drowning him, old enough to choose whether he wants to fight. She was quiet for a long time. Then we asked him. Jasper woke an hour later. We sat on either side of his bed holding his hands. "Baby," Abigail said, "the doctors have a way to help you get better. But it's scary, and it might hurt. Will it make the coughing stop? Maybe. If it works. Will I have to stay in Denver? For a while longer, yes." He thought about this, his small face serious. "Will you stay with me?" "I'll stay as long as I can. And Doc will be here too." Jasper looked at me. "Doc, will it hurt a lot?" "I won't lie to you. Yes, it'll hurt. But we'll give you medicine to help. And I'll be right there the whole time. Promise?" "Promise." "Then, okay. If it means I can go home and see Finn again, okay." Abigail broke down then. Tears she'd been holding for days finally spilling over. Jasper patted her hand awkwardly. "Don't cry, Mama. I'm brave. I know you are, baby. I know." The next morning, they prepared the surgery suite. Dr. Webb walked me through the procedure again. Needle insertion between the ribs, slow introduction of air into the pleural space, monitoring for lung collapse, watching for complications. My hands shook as I scrubbed. 2 years since I'd held a scalpel. 2 years since I'd made a choice that meant life or death. Dr. Webb noticed. "You don't have to do this. I can get another assistant." "No, I need to do this. For him, for me. The general?" "Among others." Jasper was already sedated when we entered. Small and pale on the operating table, I positioned myself on his left side, scalpel in hand. "Ready?" Dr. Webb asked. "Ready." The procedure took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of careful needle placement, of watching Jasper's chest rise and fall, of monitoring his vitals as we slowly collapsed his diseased left lung. 40 minutes of the most focused, terrifying, purposeful work I'd done in 2 years. When it was over, Jasper was breathing easier, the death rattle gone, his color better. Dr. Webb clapped me on the shoulder. "Welcome back, Dr. Mercer." I looked at my hands. Steady now, certain. Yeah, I guess I am back. Jasper woke slowly in recovery. Abigail was there immediately, checking him over with a mother's practiced eye. "How do you feel?" "Tired. But I can breathe." "Good. That's good." I stood in the doorway watching them, mother and son, fighter and survivor. Abigail looked up, saw me, smiled. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying, for helping, for choosing us. I always choose you, both of you, all of you." Later that evening, Dr. Webb found me in the corridor. "You've got natural surgical talent. Have you ever considered specializing?" "I'm a general practitioner, or was. You were. You could be again, better. I could write recommendations, get you into any surgical program in the country. I appreciate that. But I have a family in Montana, a ranch, obligations." Dr. Webb smiled. "Obligations that look a lot like love?" "Something like that. Then Montana's lucky to have you." 3 days after the surgery, a telegram arrived from Thornton Ranch. I read it twice, then carried it to Abigail. She opened it with shaking hands. "Railroad meeting held. Stop. Finn testified. Stop. Judge ruled in our favor. Stop. Railroad must use alternate route. Stop. 20-foot easement granted for telegraph lines. Stop. Land is ours. Stop. Come home when ready. Stop." Nate Abigail sat down hard. "We won?" "Finn won. That 9-year-old boy stood up to the railroad company and won." She started laughing and crying at the same time. "Marcus would be so proud." "I am proud. That's our son. Our son." She looked at me. "You said our." "I did. Sam, Abigail." She kissed me then. Not gentle, not tentative, but fierce and grateful and full of promise. When we broke apart, we were both breathless. "When Jasper's released," she said, "when we get home, let's make this real. Not a contract, not an arrangement, a real marriage. Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything. Then yes, let's make it real. 2 weeks later, Jasper was cleared for travel. Dr. Webb gave us strict instructions: rest, fresh air, continued medication, monthly checkups with Dr. Yates. But he could go home. The trip back took 6 days. We traveled slow, stopping often, letting Jasper rest. He was thinner, weaker, but alive, breathing easier than he had in months. Finn met us at the ranch, running down the road before the wagon even stopped. He climbed into the back, grabbed Jasper in a hug that made his little brother squeak. "I missed you. I missed you too." "Did you really beat the railroad?" "I really did. Wait till you hear how." That night, around the dinner table, Finn told the story. How he'd stood before the judge and recited my testimony word for word. How he'd answered questions with clarity beyond his years. How Nate had stood beside him, solid and supportive. How the town had watched a 9-year-old boy defend his family and won. "You did what I couldn't," Abigail said, "what I was too scared to do. You taught me how, you and Pa." He said brave isn't not being scared. Brave is being scared and doing it anyway. Marcus said that all the time. Later, after the boys were in bed, Abigail and I stood on the porch looking at stars. "Nate came by earlier," she said, "while you were settling Jasper." "And?" "He's leaving, taking a foreman job 2 territories over. He and Maggie are going to start fresh, try to build something real. How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, sad, grateful, all of it." She leaned into me. "He said to tell you thank you for pushing him, for making him see what he was wasting. I didn't do anything. You did everything. You showed up. You stayed. You chose us when you could have walked away. Same as you." We stood there in comfortable silence. "Sam?" "Yeah? The contract expires in 4 months." "I know. I don't want to wait 4 months, neither do I. So let's not. Let's make this real now. Today. Tomorrow. As soon as Reverend Holt can get here." "You sure?" She turned in my arms, looked up at me. "I married one good man out of necessity. I loved him as best I could, but it was never enough. Now I want to marry a good man out of choice, and love him the way he deserves, completely, honestly, without holding back. I'm not Marcus, I know. You're Sam. And Sam is exactly who I want." I kissed her under Montana stars, this woman I'd married on paper and learned to love in practice. Then let's do it. Reverend Holt came 3 days later. The second wedding was nothing like the first. For one thing, there were flowers. Wild flowers Finn and Jasper had picked from the meadow, arranged in mason jars around the front porch. For another, there were guests. Nate and Maggie before they left for their new start. Dr. Yates, who'd ridden in special. A handful of neighbors who'd supported us through the railroad fight. Mrs. Calloway was conspicuously absent. I counted that as a win. Abigail wore the same blue dress, but this time she'd added lace at the collar. Something borrowed from Maggie. Something blue in her hair, a ribbon Jasper had insisted on. Something old. The wedding ring Marcus had given her, which she'd removed the night before and placed on the mantel next to his photograph. I'd borrowed a suit from Nate, since mine was still covered in travel dust. It fit poorly in the shoulders, but well enough. We gathered on the porch where this had all started. Where 6 months ago I'd signed a contract to be a husband in name only. Where I'd promised 2 years and nothing more. Reverend Holt stood before us, same Bible, different sermon. "I married you two once before," he said, "in this same spot. And I remember thinking, here are 2 broken people trying to build something out of necessity. I wasn't sure it would last a month, much less 6. He smiled. "I've never been happier to be wrong. What you've built here isn't based on contracts or convenience. It's based on choice. Every day for 6 months, you've chosen each other. Chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. Chosen to love when fear would have been safer. Chosen to be a family when remaining strangers would have been simpler." He looked at me. "Samuel, do you take Abigail as your wife?" "Not for 2 years. Not until the railroad matter is settled. But for as long as you both shall live, I do." "And Abigail, Do you take Samuel as your husband, not out of necessity, not for protection or papers, but out of love and choice and the hope of building something real? I do. Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Again. But this time, it counts. I kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. The small crowd cheered. Finn whistled. Jasper clapped until his hands hurt. Maggie had prepared food. Simple frontier fare, but made with care. We ate on the porch while spring sun warmed everything. The boys ran around the yard, Jasper still weak, but determined to keep up with his brother. Nate approached me while I was refilling my coffee. "Take care of them," he said. "I will, and take care of this place." It meant everything to Marcus. "Now it's yours to protect." "I know." He extended his hand. I shook it. "You're a good man, Dr. Mercer. Better than I gave you credit for. You're a good man too, Nate. Just took you a while to remember it." He laughed, bitter and honest. "Maggie and I are leaving tonight. Fresh start. New territory. No ghosts. I hope you find what you're looking for. Me too." He walked away, put his arm around his wife. She leaned into him, and I saw hope there. Real hope. The kind that comes from finally building this life forward instead of constantly looking back. Dr. Yates found me next. "How's Jasper really doing?" "Better. Stronger. The procedure worked better than we hoped. You did good work in Denver. Dr. Webb wrote me, said you've got natural surgical talent. I'm a general practitioner. You could be more if you wanted. I have everything I want right here." She smiled, that knowing smile of someone who'd seen through better lies. "For now. But eventually you'll want more. When that time comes, come find me. I could use a partner. Circuit doctors are dying breed. But a circuit surgeon? That could change frontier medicine. I'll think about it. You do that." As evening settled, guests started leaving. Nate and Maggie first, heading west toward their new life. Then the neighbors, one by one, until only our small family remained. Finn and Jasper sat on the porch steps, watching stars come out. I sat beside them, Abigail on my other side. "You know what Pa used to say?" Finn asked. "What?" "He said family isn't who you're born to, it's who you die for. That's heavy wisdom for a deathbed." He knew he was dying. I think he wanted to make sure I understood, that he chose to be my Pa. That biology didn't matter. He was right, I know. Finn leaned against me. "And I think he'd be okay with this, with you and Ma, with us being a family. You think so?" "Yeah. Because you chose us too. You didn't have to. The contract was just paper, but you stayed anyway. I stayed because I love you. All of you." Jasper turned around, eyes wide. "You love us?" "Of course I do. Like a real Pa? Like a real Pa." He launched himself at me, nearly knocking me backward. Finn rolled his eyes, but I saw him smiling. Later, after the boys were finally in bed, Abigail and I sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd signed our contract, the same table where we'd negotiated terms. She pulled out the old contract, unfolded it. "We should burn this probably," but she didn't move, just stared at it. "What?" I asked. "I was just thinking. This piece of paper brought you here. If I hadn't been desperate enough to propose a contract marriage to a stranger, you'd have ridden right past, gone somewhere else. We'd never have met. Fate, maybe, or just dumb luck. Either way, I'm grateful." She touched a match to the corner. The paper caught, curled, turned to ash in the hearth. "There. Now we're not bound by paper anymore. Just by choice. Just by choice." She stood, took my hand. "Come to bed. Our bed. No more separate quarters." I followed her upstairs to the room that had been hers, then Marcus's, then hers alone, and now ours together. We lay in darkness, holding each other. "Sam?" "Yes?" "Tell me about the general, about what really happened." I thought about deflecting, changing the subject. But we'd promised honesty. "There were 4 men," I said, "field hospital outside Petersburg. The general had a gut wound, survivable with immediate surgery. The 3 soldiers had limb wounds, also survivable with care. But we only had enough morphine and surgical supplies for 1 emergency procedure. The others would have to wait. And you chose the general." "I chose the general. He was important to the war effort. His strategic knowledge was irreplaceable. The math made sense. But the 3 soldiers died. 2 died that night. 1 died 3 days later from infection I could have prevented if I treated him first. Did you know them, the soldiers? No, just names on charts. Johnson, 23. Peters, 19. Mickelson, 27, with a wife and new baby. Those are the details I remember from the reports I read later. And the general? General William Hendricks. He lived. Went on to negotiate surrender at Appomattox. Probably saved thousands of lives by ending the war when he did. So you made the right choice. I made a choice I could justify. That's not the same thing. Do you still think about them? Johnson, Peters, Mickelson. Every day. I see their faces in every patient I treat. I hear their names every time I make a decision about who to help first. She rolled over, propped herself up on one elbow. Sam, you can't save everyone. You know that. Knowing and accepting are different things. Then let me help you accept it. You saved Jasper. You stayed when you could have run. You chose us when you could have chosen easier paths. Those are the choices that define you now, not the ones you made in a war I held her against me. How'd you get so wise? 10 years of practice making choices I regretted. Eventually, you learn to live with regret or you drown in it. We fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other. No more walls, no more secrets. I dreamed of the general for the first time in months. But this time, the dream was different. In it, I stood at a crossroads. One path led to the general, one to the 3 soldiers. I walked neither. Instead, I turned and walked toward a third path I hadn't seen before. Down that path was a ranch in Montana, a woman with brown eyes, 2 boys who needed a father, a life I'd never planned but somehow found. And in the dream, the general and the soldiers both nodded, approving, released me to find my own redemption. I woke to morning light and Abigail beside me. Good dream? She asked. The best. The months that followed established a new rhythm. Jasper continued to heal, slowly but steadily. Dr. Yates visited monthly, each time pronouncing him stronger. The collapsed lung gradually re-expanded as the disease retreated. Within 6 months, he was running again. Within a year, you couldn't tell he'd been sick at all. Finn grew like a weed, shot up 3 inches in 8 months, started helping with serious ranch work. Talked about becoming a doctor someday, maybe studying with me and Dr. Yates. The railroad completed their alternate route. The telegraph line across our eastern pasture brought connection to the wider world without destroying what we'd fought to keep. Isaac Drummond sent a telegram of congratulations. We framed it. Dr. Yates and I started making circuit rounds together. She taught me frontier medicine. I taught her surgical techniques. We developed a reputation. The widow doctor and her young protege. People traveled days to see us. Abigail ran the ranch with confident efficiency. Hired a new foreman to replace Nate. Expanded the herd, made the place profitable in ways Marcus had dreamed about but never achieved. We were happy, not perfect. We still fought about money and priorities and whose turn it was to do dishes, but we fought as partners, as equals, as people who'd committed to each other and kept recommitting every day. And then, a year after our real wedding, Abigail came to me with news. I'm pregnant. I dropped the fence post I was carrying. What? Pregnant? About 3 months along? Dr. Yates confirmed it yesterday. I held her against me, dizzy with joy and terror. Are you happy? She asked. Terrified. Ecstatic. Both. Me too. We told the boys that evening. Finn looked thoughtful. Jasper bounced with excitement. Will it be a brother or sister? Jasper asked. We won't know until the baby comes. I hope it's a brother. Then we'd have 3 against 2. 3 against 2 what? Abigail laughed. Boys against girls. Finn was quiet through dinner. After, I found him on the barn roof with his telescope. Want to talk about it? I asked, climbing up. About what? About the baby. You've been quiet. He shrugged. It's good. I'm happy for you and Ma, but nothing. Really, I'm happy. I waited. Silence is a good tool with children. Eventually they fill it. Do you think you'll love it more? Finn asked finally. Because it's really yours? Oh, Finn. Well, will you? Come here. He scooted closer, and I put my arm around him. Listen to me. You and Jasper are mine. Not because of biology, not because of papers, but because I chose you. Every single day for a year and a half, I've chosen to be your father. This baby doesn't change that. Promise? Promise. Being a father isn't about blood, it's about showing up. And I'm showing up for all of you, now and always. Even when I'm annoying, especially when you're annoying, he laughed, tension breaking. Can I tell you something? Anything. I'm glad Nate left. I'm glad you're my pa instead of him. Why? Because you chose to stay. Nate might have given me life, but you gave me a father. That's better. I hugged him close, this boy who'd taught me more about love than I'd taught him about medicine. The baby came in early spring, a girl, tiny and perfect, with Abigail's brown eyes and a voice that could wake the dead. We named her Margaret, after Marcus's mother, Maggie for short. Finn and Jasper were instantly devoted. They fought over who got to hold her, who got to fetch diapers, who got to make her smile. Watching them with their baby sister, I understood something I hadn't before. Family wasn't about biology or obligation or even choice alone. It was about all of it together. The messy, complicated, beautiful tangle of people who loved each other despite and because of their differences. One evening, when Maggie was 3 months old, I sat on the porch with all 4 of my family members, Abigail nursing the baby, Finn reading to Jasper from a medical text, the sun setting over land we'd fought to keep. Abigail looked at me, smiled. What are you thinking? That I rode into Montana 2 years ago looking for a place to hide. And instead, I found a place to live. She reached for my hand. We all found that, thanks to a desperate bargain and dumb luck. And choice. Don't forget choice. Never. Finn looked up from his book. Doc, it says here that triage comes from a French word meaning to sort, like you sort patients by who needs help most. That's right. So when you saved the general instead of the soldiers, you were just doing triage? I was. Then maybe you should stop feeling guilty about it. You sorted right. The general ended the war. That saved more people than 3 soldiers would have, out of the mouths of children. Maybe so, I said. Maybe so. But the truth was, I'd stopped feeling guilty months ago. Not because I'd justified the choice, but because I'd learned what Abigail and Nate and Marcus had all learned before me. You can't change the past. You can only choose better in the present. And every day, I chose this family, this life, this promise to show up and stay in love as best I could. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It was better. As darkness fell and stars came out, I thought about the letter that had brought me here. Reverend Holt's simple message. Widow needs help. Are you willing? I'd been willing out of desperation, stayed out of obligation. But somewhere along the way, obligation had transformed into love. The boys headed inside, bickering about bedtime. Abigail stood, cradling our sleeping daughter. Coming? In a minute. She kissed my cheek and went inside. I sat alone in the Montana night, listening to the sounds of my family settling for sleep. Finn's voice reading one more chapter. Jasper's laugh. Abigail's lullaby to baby Maggie. This was my redemption. Not forgetting the general or the 3 soldiers, but honoring their memory by choosing to save who I could, love who I could, live as fully as I could. I'd made mistakes. I'd carry scars. But I'd also found grace in the most unlikely place, in a contract that became a promise, in a stranger who became a wife, in children who became mine not by blood but by choice, in a widow's bargain that saved us both. A year passed, then another. The ranch prospered under Abigail's management, and my medical practice grew as I rode circuit with Dr. Yates. We became known throughout 3 territories, the widow doctor and the reformed battlefield surgeon. People trusted us, sought us out. Finn, now 12, had become my unofficial apprentice. He rode with us when school allowed, learned to set bones and stitch wounds, absorbed medical knowledge like his father had absorbed ranch wisdom. Jasper, fully recovered, showed more interest in the land itself. He spent hours with the new foreman learning cattle management, irrigation, soil conservation. He had Marcus's practical mind, his ability to see how systems worked and make them better. And Maggie, our wild-haired daughter, learned to walk and then to run, keeping up with her brothers with fierce determination. She was fearless in a way that terrified Abigail and delighted me. One evening, Dr. Yates and I returned from a particularly difficult case. A homesteader had fallen from his roof, broken his back. We'd stabilized him, taught his wife how to care for him, but the prognosis was grim. As we unsaddled our horses, Dr. Yates spoke. "I'm getting old, Samuel. 70 next month. Can't ride circuit forever. You've got years left, maybe. But I've been thinking about succession, about what happens to all these people who depend on us when I can't do this anymore. You want me to take over the circuit. I want you to expand it, train others. What you and Finn are doing, that's the future. Imagine 10 doctors trained the way you're training him. 20. We could cover the whole territory, bring real medicine to people who've never had access. It's a beautiful dream. It doesn't have to be a dream." She pulled a letter from her saddlebag. "I've been corresponding with the Territorial Medical Board. They're willing to establish a frontier medical training program, based here, with you as chief instructor." "Me? I'm not qualified to run a medical school. You're the most qualified person I know. You've got battlefield experience, surgical skill, and you understand frontier medicine in a way no Eastern doctor ever could. What about the ranch? Abigail needs me here. Abigail has a foreman and 2 sons who are nearly men, and a daughter who'll probably run the place someday. She'll be fine. The question is, what do you need?" I thought about that as I finished with my horse. What did I need? I had a family I loved, a home I'd fought to keep, peace I'd never thought I'd find. But Dr. Yates was right. There was something more. A calling I'd run from for so long I'd almost forgotten it was there. Let me talk to Abigail. That night, after the children were asleep, I told her about Dr. Yates's proposal. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You want to do this?" she said finally, not a question. "I think I do, but not if it means leaving you." "Sam, look at me." I did. "You came here broken, hiding from who you were, and over these years, I've watched you become whole again, not because of me, not because of the boys, but because you finally forgave yourself enough to be the man you were meant to be." She took my hands. "A man like that doesn't belong only to one family. He belongs to everyone who needs him. If you can train doctors who'll save lives across this territory, how could I possibly ask you not to? It would mean being gone more, traveling to recruit students, setting up the program. And I would miss you every day you were gone, but I'd also be proud. Because you'd be doing what you were meant to do. I love you. I love you too. Now say yes to Dr. Yates before she finds someone else." I laughed and kissed her. This woman who'd taught me that love was about supporting someone's purpose, not holding them back from it. The Frontier Medical Training Program started small. 3 students the first year, all young men from homesteading families who'd seen too much death and wanted to learn how to fight it. Finn was one of them. At 13, he was the youngest, but also the most dedicated. He absorbed everything I taught him, asked questions that pushed my own understanding. By the second year, we had 8 students. By the third, 15. We set up a small hospital on the edge of town where students could practice under supervision. Dr. Yates and I taught them everything we knew: battlefield triage, frontier surgery, herbal medicine, how to work with limited supplies and unlimited determination. And they learned. They graduated and spread across the territory, bringing medical care to places that had never had it. I'd saved a general once and spent years drowning in guilt over the 3 soldiers I'd let die. But now, through my students, I was saving hundreds, maybe thousands. The math still didn't balance, It never would, but it was close enough to let me sleep at night. 5 years after our second wedding, on a warm spring evening, the whole family gathered on the porch. Finn, now 17 and in his final year of medical training. Jasper, 15 and already talking about agricultural innovations with the kind of passion his father would have recognized. Maggie, 5, and convinced she could ride any horse on the ranch despite being barely tall enough to reach the stirrups. And Abigail and me watching our children become the people they were meant to be. A rider approached from town. One of my students, Tommy Reichert, now graduated and practicing on his own. "Dr. Mercer," he called, "there's been an accident at the mining camp, multiple injuries. They're asking for you." I looked at Finn. He was already standing, reaching for his medical bag. "Together?" he asked. "Together." Abigail came to me, checked the supplies in my bag like she'd done 100 times before. "Be careful," she said. "Always am. Liar." She kissed me. "Come home safe." "I will." As Finn and I rode toward town, I thought about that first desperate winter when I'd arrived at Thornton Ranch with nothing but guilt and a death wish. I'd been running from medicine, from responsibility, from the weight of choices I couldn't take back. Now I was riding toward an emergency with my son beside me, ready to make hard choices again. But this time, I wasn't running from them. I was running toward them, because that's what you did when you finally understood. Every choice mattered. Every life mattered. And the only way to honor the ones you couldn't save was to save everyone you could. That's what Marcus had taught Abigail. That's what Abigail had taught me. That's what I was teaching Finn. Love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up every day, making hard choices, living with regret but not letting it destroy you. It was about choosing this life, these people, this purpose, over and over again. We rode through the Montana evening, father and son, doctors both, heading toward people who needed us. Behind us, the ranch lights glowed warm against the darkening sky. Abigail would be putting Jasper and Maggie to bed, reading them stories, tucking them in safe. When we got back, she'd be waiting, coffee on the stove, questions about the emergency, quiet pride in what we'd done. And tomorrow, we'd wake up and choose each other again, choose this family, choose this life we'd built from broken pieces and desperate bargains. I looked over at Finn, focused and serious as he mentally prepared for whatever we'd find at the mining camp. "Ready?" I asked. "Ready," he said, and we rode on into the night toward the next emergency, the next choice, the next chance to save a life, together, the way family should be. 3 months later, I received a letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by the new postal service the railroad had made possible. The irony wasn't lost on me that the telegraph line we'd fought against had now made it easier for me to receive news. The envelope was from Boston. Official letterhead from Massachusetts General Hospital. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. "Dear Dr. Mercer, we write regarding the death of General William Hendricks, who passed last month at the age of 72. In settling his affairs, his family discovered journals in which he wrote extensively about his experiences in the war. In these journals, he mentions you by name. He describes the night he was wounded and the choice you made to save him. He expresses deep gratitude for your skill and decisiveness. But more importantly, he writes about 3 other soldiers who died that same night: Johnson, Peters, and Mickelson. He knew their names. He knew you had to choose. General Hendricks spent the last 20 years of his life working with veterans organizations. He personally visited the families of every soldier who died under his command, including Johnson, Peters, and Mickelson. He told them about the impossible circumstances you faced that night. He helped them understand that their loved ones' deaths weren't due to neglect or indifference, but to the brutal mathematics of war. He wanted us to tell you that those 3 families don't blame you. They understand, and they're grateful that at least one man survived that night, even if it couldn't be their husband, their father, their son. General Hendricks left specific instructions that you should be told this. He wanted you to know that you saved not just his life, but his soul. Because knowing you carried guilt for your choice, he made it his mission to bring peace to the families affected by it. He considered it a debt he owed you for the life you gave him. The letter continued with details about a small pension the general had left for me, which I would donate to the medical training program. But I barely registered the words. I sat on the porch steps, letter in my hand, and cried. Not from guilt this time, but from relief. The general had known, he'd understood, and he'd spent 2 decades making amends I never could have made myself. Abigail found me there. "What is it?" she asked, sitting beside me. I handed her the letter. She read it silently, then took my hand. "He forgave you," she said quietly. "Or rather, he made sure you could forgive yourself. All this time, I've been carrying guilt for 3 men who died, and the man I saved spent 20 years making sure their families knew it wasn't my fault." She leaned her head on my shoulder. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we don't heal alone. Maybe someone has to show us how. I thought about Marcus, who'd loved Finn despite biology. About Nate, who'd finally chosen Maggie despite his heart. About Abigail, who'd learned that obligation and love weren't opposites. About Finn, who'd chosen me as his father. All of us learning from each other how to let go of guilt and choose life instead. Do you think he's at peace now, the general? I think he found peace by giving it to others. That's what the best of us do. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket next to my heart. That evening, I gathered the family. "I have something to tell you," I said, "about the choice I made in the war, about the general and the 3 soldiers, and I told them everything. The whole story, the choice, the guilt, the letter." When I finished, Jasper spoke first. "So you saved a man who saved others. That's like planting a tree that grows more trees," Finn added. "And now you're teaching doctors who'll save hundreds more." The general would approve. Maggie climbed into my lap, not fully understanding, but knowing I needed comfort. "It's okay, Papa. You did your best." "Yes," I said, hugging her close. "I did my best. And maybe that's all any of us can do." Abigail smiled at me across the table, eyes bright. That night, I took the 3 letters I'd carried for 5 years, the ones from the widows of Johnson, Peters, and Mickelson. The ones I'd never opened. I opened them now. They were dated shortly after the general's first visit to each family. Each one said essentially the same thing. Dr. Mercer, General Hendricks, came to see us. He explained what happened the night my husband died. He helped us understand that you faced an impossible choice. We don't blame you. We hope you don't blame yourself. Our husband would have wanted you to keep saving lives. Please don't stop because of him. I read all 3 letters twice. Then I folded them carefully and placed them in a box with the letter about the general's death. Someday, I'd give these to Finn, so he'd understand that being a doctor meant making impossible choices, and that sometimes, years later, you discovered those choices led to grace you never expected. But for tonight, I just wanted to sit with my family and feel the weight I'd carried for 7 years finally lift. Abigail found me on the porch later. "You're free now," she said. "I am." "What will you do with your freedom?" I looked out at the ranch, the barn where I'd first lived, the yard where 2 boys had taught me to be a father, the land we'd fought to keep. Keep choosing this. Keep choosing you. Keep showing up. Every single day. She took my hand. Then we're both free and both bound. By choice. By choice, I agreed. And we sat there as Montana stars came out, watching the life we'd built together, knowing we'd keep building it tomorrow and the next day and all the days after. Not because we had to, because we wanted to. Because we'd learned that the best promises weren't the ones made in desperation. They were the ones made in freedom. The ones you kept choosing. Every single day, 10 years later. Finn finished his surgical training and opened a practice 2 territories over. He married a teacher named Sarah. They had 3 children. Jasper expanded the ranch to twice its original size. He married the new foreman's daughter, Mary. They had 5 children. Maggie, at 15, was already talking about becoming Montana's first female rancher, or maybe a doctor, or possibly both. She hadn't decided yet. Dr. Yates passed peacefully in her sleep at 79. The Frontier Medical Training Program now had 40 graduates practicing across 5 territories. And Abigail and I grew old together, still choosing each other, still showing up, still building this life we'd started with a contract and transformed into love. On our 15th wedding anniversary, we stood on the same porch where we'd married twice. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Not a single one." "Liar." She smiled. "You regret not asking me to marry you for real sooner. Maybe that one." She kissed me, and I tasted salt from the tears on her cheeks. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's right." "That's what scares me." "You think it'll end?" "Everything ends eventually, even good things." I held her close. "Then we'll make the most of it while we have it, every single day. Promise?" "Promise." And I kept that promise. Every day for 30 more years, until the day I died in my sleep, Abigail's hand in mine, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and a legacy of love that started with a desperate bargain in a Montana blizzard. The local newspaper ran my obituary. Dr. Samuel Mercer, 79, passed peacefully at his ranch home. He is survived by his wife Abigail, 3 children, 14 grandchildren, and countless lives saved through his medical practice and training program. Dr. Mercer was known for his dedication to frontier medicine, his mentorship of young doctors, and his unwavering commitment to family. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations to the Frontier Medical Training Program, which continues to bring quality health care to underserved communities. But what the obituary didn't say was this: I came to Montana running from guilt. I found redemption in the most unlikely place, in a widow who needed a husband on paper, in 2 boys who needed a father, in a life I never planned but chose every single day. I made a choice once that haunted me for years. But I learned that the way to honor the dead is to save the living, to love fiercely, to show up, to choose every single day until you can't anymore. And then to die knowing you lived well, loved well, chose well. That's enough. That's everything. In memory of all those who face impossible choices and carry the weight of them, may you find your own Montana, your own Abigail, your own redemption in the choosing.